All right, good evening, everyone. I'm calling the Board of Adjustments and Appeals meeting to order. If you would all please stand and pledge allegiance to the flag with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, may we please have roll call?
Chairwoman Smith Rodriguez.
Here.
Vice Chairman Taylor.
Here.
Member Beckles.
Here.
Member Van Deven.
Here.
Member Wheelis.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. We may proceed. I am directing everyone to, I think it's PDF page 3 and thereafter are the minutes from our September 27th, 2023 meeting. If you all could take a look at those if you haven't done so already, and I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve the minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And hearing any opposed? No. All right, minutes are approved. Which moves us into a little bit of a notice statement that I'm going to read for those of you in the audience. All right, all persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located at the table near the entrance of the council chamber, or they may be obtained from our recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance to the procedures adopted in resolution number 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. Those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make public comment will be heard third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for our board to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city, and you can submit those exhibits to our recording secretary. So if all of you here are intending to speak, please be sure to fill out that oath card. All right, turning it over to staff, Ms. Anderson, have all the agenda items been properly advertised?
Yes, they have.
All right, and to our board, any members visited any sites or spoken to any of the public or applicants regarding our agenda items today? No and no. I'll tell you, I happen to be up at Burger King, so I did take a look-see over there. All right. We have no consent agenda, and we do have old business from last month, and that would be variance number 21-2023 at 3305 South Washington Avenue. Are we proceeding on that today, Ms. Anderson?
Yes, we are.
All right, then I give you the floor.
Christy Anderson, Senior Planner. The applicant is requesting 5 variances to the land development regulations to construct a 3-story single-family residence, a detached garage, a recreational pickleball court, and a screen wall for property located at 3305 South Washington Avenue, as submitted by John Green, property owner. The property has a future land use of shoreline mixed use and has a zoning designation of shoreline mixed use and is within the Titusville shoreline overlay. Properties to the north and south have the same zoning designation as the subject property, and the property abuts the Indian River Lagoon to the east and multi-family high-density R3 to the west. The lot is approximately 382 feet deep and has a width average of 53.5 feet. The property has an elevation change of approximately 10 feet when measured from the front to the back of the property. The lot is a non-conforming lot of record, and it does not meet the 75-foot lot width requirement of the shoreline mixed-use zoning district. And I'd just like to read the powers of the BAA, LDR section 34-226 states that the board shall grant a variance request when in the opinion of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, owing to special conditions, the literal enforcement of such ordinances or regulations would do manifest injustice to or impose an unnecessary hardship upon the applicant. In order to authorize any variance to the provisions of such ordinance, the board must consider the following criteria. A, special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved and which are not applicable to other land structures or buildings in the same zoning. Special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Granting the variance requested would not confer upon the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the ordinance or other lands, buildings, or structures in the same zoning district. The literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district under the terms of the ordinance. The variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. The granting of the variance will preserve the spirit of the ordinance and remain in harmony with its general purpose and intent. In granting the variance, the public safety and welfare must be assured, and in no case shall the granting of a variance result in a change of use, which would not be permitted in that zone. The property is situated between William J. Manzo's Memorial Park and the Somerset Riverfront Condominium, which is comprised of two 10-story residential condo buildings. The applicant has indicated that the narrow width of the lot and the elevation differences between the site and the neighboring properties have impacted his ability to meet all required land development regulations. The proposed plans have been provided beginning on page 27 of your packets. The first variance request is to LDR section 28-326C to allow a lot width of 53.5 feet instead of the required minimum of 75 feet for a single-family lot within the shoreline mixed-use zoning district. The site was platted prior to the 1993 administrative rezoning of the property, which determined the existing dimensional requirements of the site. The second and third variance requests are to allow a north and south side setback of 10.5 feet instead of the minimum requirement of 15 feet pursuant to LDR section 28-326C. The applicant is proposing to construct a 40-foot high, 3-story single-family dwelling, and the code requires a minimum interior side yard setback of 10 feet for single-family dwellings under 35 feet in height. An additional 1-foot side yard setback for each foot of building height over 35 feet is required. Therefore, a 40-foot tall single-family residence requires a 15-foot side yard setback. The applicant would be permitted to construct a 35-foot high single-family dwelling with minimum side setbacks of 10 feet. However, the applicant is proposing a height of 40 feet, increasing the required minimum side yard setbacks from 10 feet to 15 feet, which necessitates the needs for these requested variances. The fourth requested variance is to allow residential accessory structures in the front yard of a residential lot. The applicant is proposing to construct a detached garage located approximately 110 feet from the front property line and a pickleball court with a front setback of approximately 50 feet. LDR section 28-391F2 allows accessory structures in the front yard with a minimum front yard setback of 100 feet when the lot has a depth of 500 feet or greater. The property is also located in the Titusville shoreline area overlay and is required to provide additional shoreline protection setbacks. The overlay requires a 50-foot rear setback for the principal and accessory structures with a maximum impervious coverage of 35% within that overlay. The narrow configuration of the lot, in addition to the shoreline protection requirements, present the applicant with challenges in locating the accessory structures within the side or rear yard. Relocating the detached garage and pickleball court to the front yard of the property could be a potential solution. According to the proposed work plan, the future garage does exceed 20% of the square foot area of the principal structure and will be required to be compatible in architectural style, color, and exterior facing material to the principal structure. The area of the future garage is also not permitted to exceed 50% of the square foot area of the principal structure. The final and fifth requested variance is to allow a residential wall to be constructed at a maximum height of 8 feet instead of the maximum requirement of 6 feet pursuant to LDR section 30-182A2. The applicant is proposing to construct 160 linear feet of block wall along the south side property line abutting the park. A 96-foot portion of the wall is proposed at a height of 8 feet, and the remainder of the wall will be constructed at a height of 6 feet. Once the property is properly filled and graded for construction, the park will be at a lower elevation. The applicant has provided a proposed wall construction plan, which is contained on page 29 of your packets. The additional 2 feet would be needed to incorporate a 2-foot retaining wall in addition to 6 feet of screen block wall to properly stabilize the site while also providing adequate screening from the park. Staff has provided the following recommendations. So staff has recommended approval of variance 1 to allow a lot width of 53.5 feet instead of the required minimum of 75 feet. Variance 4 to allow a residential accessory structures in the front yard. And variance number 5 to allow a residential wall to be constructed at a height of 8 feet instead of the maximum requirement of 6 feet. The narrow lot width and elevation changes between the neighboring property presents a hardship to the applicant. Special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved and which are not applicable to other land, structure, or building in the same zoning. Granting the requested variances will not confer upon the applicant any special privileges that is denied by ordinance to the lands, buildings, or structures in the same zoning district. Staff does recommend denial to variances 2 and 3 to allow a north and south side setback of 10.5 feet instead of the required minimum of 15 feet for a structure with a height above 35 feet. The applicant has the ability to construct a 35-foot high single-family dwelling while maintaining the required minimum side setbacks of 10 feet. Special conditions and circumstances are a result of the actions of the applicant, and the requested variances are not the minimum variances that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. And I would be happy to answer any questions you may have of staff at this time.
So that's a lot to process. Is there anything that we should draw our attention to first in the packet with all the attachments? And if the answer is no, that's fine too.
Just the provided work plan. The applicant has provided the work plan in addition to the grading plan and the wall detail to illustrate the request.
You said that was on 29? Page 29. Yeah, there's the wall.
So you'll see a property survey, a sketch work plan, a grading plan, and a wall detail plan.
Is LDR section 34-347 the language contained in this packet?
The provided code section?
Yes.
Yes, that would be the applicable code section for the zoning district. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Is the language though contained in the packet? Maybe I missed it up top.
The provided excerpt of the code section?
Yes.
Yes, that is the requirements for that zoning district. In addition to the accessory structure code, the fence code, and all of the code sections that are.
Well, I'm looking
being
at page
requested.
13 of the PDF,
Okay.
where it says the first variance is to allow the minimum lot width, 53.5 feet.
Mm-hmm.
It says the site was platted beforehand, da, da, da. And then it says LDR section 34-347 provides remedies to allow the building official to permit single-family dwellings on non-conforming lots when all other regulations of the zoning district are met. So am I to understand that there are other things that are not met, which is prompting this variance?
That's correct.
Okay.
There are remedies in the code to allow construction of single-family residence that the building official has authority to grant approval, but they're required to meet all other regulations for the zoning district in addition. So that would necessitate the need for the lot width variance requirement.
Okay, any questions to Ms. Anderson?
So for them to go up 3 stories high, they would have to come in 15 feet on either side on a 53-foot lot, and they could only have a house only 23 feet wide.
That is correct.
All right. Ms. Kim, our first card, please.
John Green.
Mr. Green, please come on up. Name and address, please.
John Green, 3305 South Washington Avenue, Titusville.
Thank you. You have the floor.
And now for the rest of the story. We're south of the riverfront, Somerset riverfront condominiums. They go 120 feet tall. Okay, I'm asking for an additional 5 feet of building, but the SMU shoreline mixed use zoning says you can put a 50-foot height structure tops on that, so I'm 10 foot under the max. Granted, the 53.5-foot width that we currently have doesn't allow that, but it does allow 35. So I'm looking for an additional 5 feet to go up against 120 feet, which is literally next door. And I mean next door. They have a 15-foot setback for their 120-foot vertical. I'm asking for 10 foot for a vertical of 40 feet, which is 1/3 the size. Now, any of you drive up and down US 1, you look back there, and I don't care what I build, it'll be dwarfed by the monstrosity of the condominiums next to me. I don't have a problem with that, but I don't understand how 5 feet could throw this whole project into a wrinkle, so I'm asking for help there. The lot itself, I've owned for 23 years. We ran a business out of there for 21 plus. We demolished it last year. The lot is narrow. It is 53.5 feet wide. It is longer than a football field with end zones. So you get your steps in going from top to bottom. It is a challenge. It is a elevation challenge, as well as a width challenge, as well as a length challenge. It's been a challenge, but we're making progress. Ms. Anderson's or staff's analysis is spot on with everything in my book except the height variance. They're not wanting to grant the extra 5 feet that I would like. So we'll take it piece at a time. So the 53.5 foot, I can't do anything about. That's a hardship. The residential accessory structure in the front yard would be allowed if it were over 500 feet of length. It's 386-ish. I'm still over 100 plus feet, which is the requirement for 500 feet for the accessory setback, which is noted in the analysis. It will have to conform to the architectural style of the house. It will. I'm not concerned about that. The fifth variance request is for an 8-foot wall. This commences 50 feet back from the property line of where the river starts, just goes up 50 feet, then it transitions to 6 feet all the way out to the street from there. In this first phase, we're building 160 feet of the wall. The second phase, we pick up the other 140 and go the distance. It's a massive project, actually. The 8-foot wall is necessitated from my civil engineer and his analysis of drainage, site, retention, the whole shooting match. We don't do it for long, but from that point where we start it and go back, the site, you can see it from Manzo Park, you can see it from Vine and Olive Restaurant, the whole site has just taken a dive. So we need that 8 foot. We've minimized it to be just along the house at 96 feet. The balance of everything is 6 foot out all the way to the street. So the real problem here is the height that I'm proposing, which is 40 feet. Which is 5 foot over the allowed. So it's 5 feet, but I'm going up against, again, a 120-foot wall structure that's 15 feet off the property line, and it's massive. It doesn't matter what I build, It's just, you can't compare the two. And I have trees in Manzo Park that are taller substantially than the building that I propose to build. So I am sandwiched in between the land of giants, and I don't see where 5 feet is going to set us back. And I need the 10-foot setback for items 2 and 3, even though code would tell you it needs to be 15. If we go to 15, we can't do this project. I'm also perplexed that, when I purchased the property, it was a triplex, and here I am downsizing, if you will, to a single-family home use. And yet, if I was building townhouses, I could get away with a 25-foot lot minimum. So I could put more density on the site, and people have proposed that, and I wouldn't have the site problem that I'm looking for, the 75-foot width. I bought into it, and I've used it. It's 53.5 feet wide, and it's a non-conforming lot indeed. So it is a challenging project, and it is a lot to uncover, but in reality, the majority of what I'm asking for today is a 5-foot height variance that'll allow the setbacks to extend out to 10 feet, and it's still a tight site with that. So the home that we propose to build in there is 32 feet 4 inches wide. It's not, we couldn't go wide, so we're going vertical.
All right, Mr. Green, thank you. That was a very clear presentation. I appreciate that. Questions from our board?
I understand you're not wanting a 20-foot wide house, even 10 stories tall, because half of it would be taken up with stairs or elevators.
It's tight even at 32 feet 4 inches, but it's doable. Long time in the making, a lot of work to get to this point. And I will say that Ms. Anderson visited the site with several staff members last month and saw it firsthand, and that was appreciated because I think it opened her eyes to the challenges that it proposes. But we don't see eye to eye on the setbacks, so that's your job to disseminate the 5 foot of total height. My 40 feet.
You don't see eye to code on
eye to code,
setbacks.
correct. My 40 feet compared to my neighbor's 120 feet. It's just, it's staggering.
Mr. Wheelis, questions?
I would just like to reiterate what I've read in the report, and that is that Manzo Park is your one side yard setback neighbor, and the other is the Somerset condominium.
They are to the south of
To the south end.
my property, and the condo is just to the north. We're just a flash. I built a site screen wall in front of the property years ago, and I've landscaped it, and I've tried to hide for a long time. But the curtain's down, and
I understand. I remember some of the challenges you had. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
that's okay. In the analysis, it said that Manzo Park would be lower. It will be lower than the elevation of our new finished floor elevation. That's true, but the current levels along that fence line don't change for the park.
And the 8-foot wall contains the retaining wall that's going to help with the elevation differential.
That is correct, mandated by the civil engineer.
I understand.
I wasn't happy about that. It was a budget buster, but here we go.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Green? None right now. Thank you, sir. You can be seated. I'll bring it back. Oh, actually, next card.
He's the only one for this item.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. I do have a question, Ms. Anderson, regarding the condo at 120 feet in height. Is it 40 feet and above is a 15-foot setback?
It would be one additional side yard setback, 1 foot additional over 35 feet. So any structure over 35 feet is going to start to increase those side setback requirements.
So the condo was already there and in existence when this code started?
I do not have that information.
I see a volunteer from the audience.
I have that information. This code was put into place after this condo was built,
Okay.
so that
makes
we
sense.
wouldn't look like New Smyrna or Miami when you're running down.
That makes sense.
the
Okay,
US one.
thank you. All right, any other questions to Ms. Anderson? Okay. If not, and no other questions of Mr. Green, then the board is encouraged to engage in discussion or make a motion per each variance within the variance, yes?
Yes, I'm looking at page 11. You can also see the list on page 5. I think the one on page 11 is the first page of the staff report that both describes the code sections and the requested variance to that section. So if you use the 1 through 5 on page 11 to discuss and then make your motion for each code section, that'll be easier for us to provide in the development order.
All right, thank you. All right, any discussion amongst ourselves?
I myself honestly don't see a problem with 1 through 5 on this because of it's 53 feet, 53 and a half feet wide. There is just no way it's going to meet the 15 feet on either side. It's just useless to build a 20-foot wide facility there or any type of property on there to go into height. For the 5-foot difference in there being so far back from the road and the buildings on either side, I don't see that this is going to be a detriment to the neighborhood or an eyesore. I mean, honestly, when I ride by there, before he tore the other place down, I didn't know it was there either. I was just told it got tore down, and I said, oh, okay. Of course, I don't go to Mansell Park very often, but I don't see how, I personally am in agreement for what he wants to do on this, improve this property and make a very nice living home there. That I think it's a great plan.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board?
I've looked carefully at each of the items, and I don't see a positive impact that would come from enforcing the code as written for these. So ultimately, I would be in favor of all the variance requests.
All right, thank you. Any other comments?
I agree, especially since it's kind of, it's not in the middle of a neighborhood. Like you're saying with the other buildings it's not going to be inconsistent with the other buildings that neighbor it. So I don't have an issue with it either, with any of the variance requests.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion one by one. If you want to look at page 11, as council suggested, also pages 14 and 15 of the PDF might be helpful.
Well, would it be necessary if I made the motion, but I said approval of motions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
If there's no debate on the board as to that item, I think that would be acceptable the way it's presented and typed out.
Then I would like to make a motion for variance number 21-2023 at 3005 South Washington Avenue, that all 5 listed under A, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 be approved as presented by the applicant.
Would you mind reading the code sections that are being varied into the motion? Please.
Under each one,
Yeah, just list them as part of your motion.
number 1, LDR section 28-326C. Number 2, LDR section 28-326C. Again, on number 3, the same number, LDR 28-326C. Number 4, LDR section 28-391F2. And number 5, LDR section 30-182A2,
As presented in the staff report.
as presented in the staff report, yes.
And I think the address is 3305 South Washington Avenue.
I said that wrong, I'm sorry.
Okay, I have a motion. Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a second. Is there any further discussion amongst the board? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairwoman Smith Rodriguez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Taylor,
Yes?
Member Beckles, Yes.
Member Van Daven?
Yes.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Green, all 5 of your variants requested within your variance are granted. You are good to go.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night. All right, I scrolled down to page 42 of the PDF. All right, so next up on our agenda is variance item 24-2023 on Elizabeth Avenue. Staff?
The applicant is requesting a variance to the land development regulations to allow for the construction of a one-story single-family residence located at the northeast corner of Elizabeth Avenue and Cora Avenue as submitted by Stephen Fear, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, property owner. The property has a future land use of medium-density residential and is zoned single-family high density. The surrounding zoning districts have the same zoning designation as the subject property, and the lot does not meet the minimum lot area or width requirements of the R1C zoning district. The property has a rectangular corner lot with 50 feet of frontage along Elizabeth Avenue and 115 feet of linear frontage along Cora Avenue. And the property is currently a vacant residential lot. The applicant is requesting a variance to the Land Development Regulations, Chapter 28, Section 28305C to allow a side corner yard setback of 10 feet instead of the required minimum of 20 feet. The surrounding area consists predominantly of single-family homes and vacant residential lots. Many of the undeveloped lots have the same configurations and dimensions as the subject property. The property was platted in 1953 prior to the 1993 administrative rezoning of the property, which determined the existing dimensional requirements of the site. The applicant has stated that the narrow width of the corner lot has impacted his ability to meet the minimum 20-foot side corner yard setback requirement and has also indicated that the neighboring property to the east has a 10-foot side corner yard setback and wishes to align the proposed home with the neighboring residence to provide consistency. The proposed work plan has been provided on page 54 of your packets, and an aerial image of the site showing the surrounding area has been provided on page 55. It is important to note that the provided work plan indicates a 9.75-foot north side setback. If the variance request is approved, all other proposed setbacks will be required to be met in the dimensional standards of the single-family high-density zoning district pursuant to LDR Section 28-305C. The nonconforming lot on Elizabeth Avenue could be considered a hardship to justify encroachment into the side corner yard setback for the proposed home. If the requested side corner yard setback variance is approved, the proposed home would be located approximately 22 feet from the roadway. Staff has provided a recommendation of approval of the variance request to allow single-family residence to be constructed with a side corner yard setback of 10 feet instead of the required minimum of 20 feet. In granting the variance, special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. The reduced lot width presents a hardship to the applicant. Granting the requested variance will not confer upon the applicant any special privileges that is denied by the ordinance to other lands, buildings, or structures within the same zoning district. And I'd be happy to take any questions from staff that you may have.
All right, thank you. Any members to Ms. Anderson? Can I say members, any questions? I'm cracking up here today. No? All right. Ms. Kim, our first card, please.
Kim Fisher.
Kim Fisher. Welcome. Please state your name and address.
Good evening, Kim Fisher, 1614 White Dove Drive, Winter Springs. I'll make this short and sweet. You guys want to go home, but yes, this is, thank you for the presentation. This is an existing 50-foot wide platted lot, and the other lots next door, there's several under construction. They're also 50-foot wide, and with a 10-foot side setback gives them a 30-foot wide house, which is fine. But since this is a corner lot, the requirement would be a 20-foot side setback from the street side, which would be a 20-foot wide house. I don't think we can fit a 20-foot wide house, so that's why we're asking for the variance, so we can match the same size house as all of the other ones around. And I'm here if you got any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
So So this is new construction, there's not any existing property
Correct.
there, so
Correct.
the neighborhood needs some new construction.
And there's never been a house on this property before?
Not that I'm aware of. And there's several of them that are under construction next door, across the street, a few doors down. And this will be the same size house as the rest of them.
All right, anything further? All right, thank you, ma'am. Ms. Kim, next card.
That's the only one for this item.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to our board for discussion amongst ourselves, if any, and/or questions to Ms. Anderson, and/or a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. Pursuant to variance 24-2023, Elizabeth Avenue, we don't have a street address. Is there any other way we need to address that, council?
Ms. Farrell, we only indicate that it's on Elizabeth Avenue. Do we need to give any other indication of a specific location?
I think there was a parcel number on the application.
Well, there is a parcel number actually on page 44.
2023.
I was advised that that
It's not
is
2023, it's by,
page,
Yeah, on
PDF
page 44, the first page of the staff briefing, under item B, that provides the parcel ID number and the tax ID number for the property on page 44.
So yes, you could use the tax ID number or the parcel ID for the reference of the motion. On line 13 of page 44.
Parcel ID, referencing parcel ID 22-3509-05-147.
Okay. And that's regarding section 28-305 subsection C?
Correct. 283305C to allow side corner yard setback of 10 feet instead of the required 20 feet.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
I have a second. Any further discussion amongst the board?
And that, now you said 10 foot, it showed on there 9.5 foot on the drawing.
I believe the interior side setback to the north was labeled as 9.75, and it's required to be a 10-foot interior side yard setback. So I felt that it'd be important to note that that would be required to be 10 feet. However, the side yard corner setback is proposed at 10.
Instead of 20.
Okay.
So may I amend that one section for that side of the yard to be less than the 10 feet?
But you're talking about two different setbacks, correct?
Yes.
Yes, on the north side.
Yeah, the variance that is being requested is for the side yard corner setback of 10 feet instead of the required minimum of 20.
Right.
But, okay, so if we just do the south side, then the north side would be out of variance with the
They
drawing
would have
presented.
to alter the plans to make that 10-foot side setback because it's off by a few inches. So I just wanted to make sure that that is noted, that
Okay.
interior side setback is not correct on the work plan.
Nor is it before us today.
Correct.
Okay, so the motion is regarding the side corner yard setback of 10 feet instead of the required 20 feet. The motion holds, the second holds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Member Beckles,
Yes.
Member Van Deven,
Yes.
Member Wheelis,
Yes.
Chairwoman Smith Rodriguez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Taylor.
Yes.
All right, congratulations, folks. Your variance passed. You are good to go. All right, I have moved on to page 62 of our PDF regarding variance number 26-2023, located at 3293 Columbia Boulevard. Ms. Anderson?
The applicant is requesting two variances to the land development regulations to allow for the construction of a dual drive-through lane at an existing drive-through restaurant as submitted by John Barwick and authorized by Vicente Tomain, representative of Burger King Company LLC, owner. The property has a future land use designation of commercial high intensity and is zoned community commercial. All surrounding zoning districts have the same zoning designation as the subject property. The 9.8 acre lot is rectangular with approximately 210 linear feet of frontage on Columbia Boulevard and 200 linear feet of frontage on Wendover Trail. The lot does meet the minimum lot area and width requirements of the community commercial zoning district. The property is an existing drive-through restaurant, which is a permitted use in the zoning district. The first variance request is to allow the encroachment of a dumpster enclosure and a second drive-through lane into a required landscape yard. LDR section 30-337A requires a type A 10-foot wide landscape buffer along the southern property line. No active recreation area, storage of materials, parking, or structures except for necessary utility boxes and equipment shall be located within a landscape yard. The owner desires to add a dual drive-through to keep this location at the industry standard. Due to the configuration of the existing restaurant, the owner does not have the ability to add the second drive-through lane without encroaching into the required landscape yard buffer. The existing restaurant was constructed in 1998 and complies with the setback requirements of the CC zoning district. The applicant's proposed work plan has been provided beginning on page 77 of your packets. The proposed dual drive-through restricts access to the angled parking bay in the rear of the building, which consists of 12 parking spaces. The engineering has provided the following review comments. The angled parking bay with abutting one-way aisle is rendered effectively unusable due to the fact that one can only access it through the restricted drive-through, and these parking spaces will no longer be considered as contributing towards meeting the minimum required parking under the current code. The site currently exceeds the minimum required parking by 25 additional spaces. The second variance request is to allow a dumpster enclosure opening exposed to public view. LDR Chapter 30, Section 30-339E3 requires that a dumpster enclosure be oriented so the opening is not exposed to public view. The proposed location of the second drive-through lane blocks access to the existing dumpster enclosure, and the relocation of the dumpster is needed to accommodate the additional drive-through lane. The proposed location of the dumpster abuts a two-way access driveway opening, and engineering has provided the following concerns related to the proposed location. The trash enclosure gate encroaches into the driveway when fully opened. In addition, the driveway will be blocked off during the truck maneuver and service to the dumpster. The excess parking on the site provides an opportunity to remove existing parking in order to accommodate the dumpster enclosure at a more appropriate location that would not be exposed to public view and would not interfere with the ingress and egress of the site. Staff has provided a recommendation of denial for the variance request, as there are no special conditions or circumstances that are peculiar to the property. Granting the variance would confer upon the applicant a privilege denied by others. The literal interpretation of the code would not deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by others, and the variance is not the minimum necessary to make reasonable use of the property. And I'll be happy to address any questions the board has of staff.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, our first card, please.
Jonathan Barwick.
Jonathan Barwick. Good evening. Please state your name and address.
My name is Jonathan Barwick. My address is 120 North Highway 71, Weehawken, Florida. I appreciate you taking the time to look over this and give us a chance to present our case here. And I understand the client would like to conform to the city's code requirements if this was a new construction. The problem is this building was built in 1998, and the idea of double drive-throughs at the time wasn't really a thing. And So really for the client to be able to bring this location up to the current double drive-through standard of pretty much every fast food restaurant you see now, any new fast food restaurant you see constructed is going to have a double drive-through. Without tearing the building down to basically accommodate the second drive-through, the only way to do it would be to violate this landscape requirement. Our argument too would be that this violation really wouldn't hurt any neighboring properties. The property just directly to the south of this is a stormwater pond that is used by the surrounding development. So it's not like you would actually have a physical neighbor that would be seeing this second drive-through all the time. And the reason for the dumpster relocation to the area that we've chosen it is all these drive-throughs now have like a clearance bar and, a clearance requirement to get into the drive-through. And if we kept the dumpster location where it was at currently, the garbage truck couldn't make it underneath this clearance bar and go and service the dumpster. So we would have to move it somewhere else on site. And really moving it to where those 12 parking spaces were that are over there to the east of the building now, the garbage truck would still have to drive through the drive-through lane to be able to get over there to that side. So it really doesn't gain anything by putting it over there. Now, our client and the owner is definitely willing to add additional landscaping to the property, to basically offset that landscaping that's removed in that landscaping buffer. And we would also be willing to do anything that the city requires as far as screening for the dumpster. And obviously, the owner would want to schedule, dumpster pickups at times that would, not conflict with their service to their restaurant. So I think as far as the blockage of the road, I think it's in the best interest of the owner as well to schedule those dumpster pickup times when it accommodates everyone.
Mr. Barr, how much encroachment into the 10-foot side landscaping buffer are we talking about?
Let me pull it up here to be able to tell you exactly. It's approximately 6 feet, so you would have, 3 feet of that 10-foot buffer at the worst part. Now, that doesn't extend all the way down the entire property line. Obviously, where the new drive-through isn't going, we would maintain the 10-foot buffer in those areas.
One of your comments was that the owner would add landscaping elsewhere. That the building itself looks a little rough.
Yes, I
Doesn't look
would
maintained.
agree.
The
And
landscaping's not even maintained now. So to encroach further into landscaping doesn't make me feel confident that it's.
well, the plan with this restaurant too is that they're going to be doing exterior renovations too with this and interior renovations with this restaurant. So I think the goal is trying to restore the whole property as well. It's not just, can we get a second drive-through in here? And I would tend to agree with you. The property is in not that great of a situation. And it is a new owner that owns this Burger King. It's not who has been the previous owner for several years.
I'll tell you, that's my primary concern, because when we have landscape buffer requirements, it's to make sure there's landscaping and make the property look nice and have a good distance between the other properties. And so for a building that's not maintained too well right now, nor is the property maintained too well, to grant the request to further remove landscaping and then in doing that be forced to move a dumpster now into a semi-public view when the property is already not looking too good, that literally defeats the point of the code. The code is meant to do everything to avoid those problems, and that's my concern. Is there anything else that you can tell me to, and I understand that they're looking to do renovations in and out. Hopefully that gets done, right? We grant a variance, they tell me to go pound sand afterwards, that's how it goes. But is there anything else that you can tell me that would solve my concerns?
I think the architect has submitted for a building permit that would include the exterior renovations of the building. So if that makes you feel any better.
And where does the dumpster go?
I mean, and if that's a deal breaker, you know, we could relocate the dumpster somewhere else if that would make the city happier. I think the client would more be satisfied if they got the drive-through and if they had to keep the dumpster. If they had to figure out something with a clearance bar, I think they would rather do that and keep the dumpster either where it is or put it, you know, on that backside to keep the code, keep in compliance with the code if they could get the drive-through, you know.
Any other questions?
Is this the same owner that has the downtown location also?
I'm not sure which location
There's
is downtown. I'm sorry,
South-
I'm not familiar with the area.
South Washington, it's on the books to be torn down and rebuilt.
If they do, I'm not sure. I know the owner owns near 100 throughout the state.
Okay.
Any other questions to Mr. Barwick? No? All right, so you can have a seat for now.
Thank you.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board unless there's another card, Ms. Kim?
No, ma'am.
Okay, didn't think so. All right, any discussion amongst ourselves and/or questions to staff?
I wouldn't have a bigger problem with the going into the landscape buffer on the back side because of that retention area at the back, which is pretty much always overgrown anyway. You couldn't see anything across there if you wanted to. But yes, I do agree that the location of the dumpster, it would be a tricky maneuver for for a truck because that is a divided road there to the west. For them to come, they do almost a 3-point turn to turn around and go get into that dumpster, and then trying to leave that area. I would like to see the dumpster at a different location.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? If the landscaping, we're really talking about the south side of the property, the back of the Burger King into the retention area, I'm not as concerned, but putting the dumpster, the property is run down. The property looks awful. And the whole point of this code is to make sure properties do not look awful. And so if we're going to then allow encroachment into the back area toward the retention pond, all right, not so horrible. But to then move a dumpster into public view, I have a problem with that. Any further discussion? I also find notable, although Mr. Barwick I don't think is in a position to answer the question, that Burger King really seemed to suffer over the last couple of years, close at certain hours, and to have a second drive-through lane to keep up with industry standards seems a little peculiar to me at that particular location. But neither here nor there, I don't think the dumpster should be moved. All right, I'll take a motion when ready. Or 62 might be easier. No? I'll entertain a motion already?
All right. Then, subject to variance 20-2023 at 3293 Columbia.
Variance 26.
Yeah, I can't get my numbers right. Okay, we'll try again. Subject to variance 26-2023 at 3293 Columbia Boulevard. I make a motion to approve the required to allow the second drive-through to encroach into the landscaped yard on the south side of the lot pursuant to section 30-337A. But not to approve the second section on the dumpster.
So
So
let's
I'm
take
just,
the
I'm
first
doing the
motion
first one.
first.
I'm
All
just
right,
doing the
so we have
first.
a motion to allow the encroachment into the required yard setback toward the south of the property. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second. Is there any further discussion regarding that section, that particular request of this variance?
So on the first one, are you talking only about the drive-through lane?
Yes,
That's correct.
we're not talking about the dumpster.
Okay.
All right, any discussion amongst the board? All right, the request is to grant that part of the variance. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Ms. Kim, roll call, please.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Chairwoman Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Taylor?
Yes?
Member Beckles?
Yes.
Member Van Deven?
Yes.
All right. The variance request to the encroachment into the landscape yard to the south is granted. All right, I will entertain a motion regarding the dumpster enclosure opening exposed to public view.
Before you move on, part of the,
Oh, to deny, you have to give a reason.
well, with the first item, the encroachment of the drive-through lane, it says and dumpster enclosure into the required landscape yard. You haven't commented or made a motion regarding the dumpster enclosure encroachment into the landscape yard in addition to exposure to public view.
But that's section 30-339E3. He just said 30-337A.
I think I misunderstood. I thought that the request for the dumpster was only to move it into public view, not to encroach. That's my mistake.
Yes. So the first variance request is to allow a drive-through lane and the dumpster enclosure encroachment into the required landscape buffer.
And the motion was only to allow the drive-through lane, so you haven't made a motion on the dumpster portion of that first request.
So I guess, when I'm looking at I'm so sorry that I missed this, on page 64, where it says the variance request, the applicant is requesting a variance to the land development regulations to allow encroachment into the required landscape yard, and then this to allow dumpster enclosure opening.
I think it may be appropriate to make the recommendation for approval for the encroachment of the landscape yard for the drive aisle only and not for the dumpster.
If you look at page 67, it
Yeah.
more clearly break it down. So ideally, we'll have 3 total motions, the second one being the enclosure of the dumpster into the landscape yard, and then the third being whether you allow the dumpster enclosure to be exposed to public view.
Okay, Mr. Barr, can you come back up then? I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
My understanding of your testimony earlier was that in order to have 2 drive-through lanes, the dumpster would have to be moved from the south side of the property.
Theoretically, it would be. I mean, the position that it's in right now is not really ideal for the drive-through lanes just because of a vertical clearance issue. Now, Burger King corporate, and what it comes down to is that it's owned by a franchisee, and the corporate wants certain things a certain way, and the franchisee has some wiggle room with what they can do on these developments. And corporate likes to have a clearance bar of 13 feet coming into the drive-through, and that's just for their own protection. The problem is with having that clearance bar, it makes it difficult or basically impossible for a dump truck to be able to go through there and service the existing dumpster. And that's why we wanted to relocate the dumpster.
Okay, so
But-
let me ask you this. If we're granting your request to encroach into the south landscape yard for your drive-through lanes, assuming you all figure out your clearance, or they figure out their clearance, and you choose to keep your dumpster in the back of the property, will the dumpster then also need to encroach into the landscape yard?
No, ma'am, if it stayed at where it was at currently, it would not encroach into the landscape yard. And that basically for them, what that would mean is on that second drive-through, they couldn't have a canopy over the drive-through, basically, is what that would basically entail.
Okay.
And so they would have to leave that second lane vertically open to allow trash trucks to enter through there.
All right, thank you.
That was my original intent.
Well, what I don't understand is if the second lane of the drive-through is encroaching to the back side, the south side of the property.
They wouldn't have to move the existing dumpsters, which is not encroaching at this time.
All right.
Existing
I believe
dumpster is not encroaching.
Your original motion, just with the verbiage excluding the dumpster.
Well, what I'm thinking
That's
is
all it
if
has
we
to say.
grant the encroachment into the south yard for the dumpster,
No,
can't they keep it there and gain access? Like, just a little further back? All right. Is your motion hold the way it was? It only grants through the drive-through lane, not the dumpster?
yes, that's correct.
All right, so council,
So I think if we hear a motion to deny the dumpster enclosure to encroach into the required landscape yard, it's consistent with your discussion.
yep.
So that, it would be your next motion.
All right,
That would
so
be the next motion.
I'll entertain a motion regarding the dumpster encroachment.
I'm sorry, but I don't think we ever got a vote on the original
No.
motion to allow the drive-through.
Yeah, we gotta,
No,
Yes, we did.
didn't. Did we vote?
Yes, we
Yeah,
did,
we
didn't
did.
we?
Okay, we voted for
I
that.
believe that's what I announced, yeah.
Yeah, we had roll call, yeah.
Okay,
So you need a second one now to deny the dumpster to
yes.
be in the setback,
If our
right?
discussion is to deny the dumpster encroachment into the landscape yard, then I will entertain a motion to that extent now.
All right, let me make a stab at this here regarding variance 26-2023 at 3293 Columbia Boulevard. I make a motion that we deny the request for the dumpster enclosure to be allowed into the
Landscape.
yard regarding section 30-337A. Is that good enough?
All right, thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes.
I have a second. Any further discussion? No. Roll call, please.
Vice Chairman Taylor,
Yes.
Member Beckles,
Yes.
Member Van Deven,
Yes.
Member Wheelis,
Yes.
Chairwoman Smith Rodriguez.
Yes. All right, dumpster can encroach. All right, moving on to the second part, or now third part of this variance. The request is to allow the dumpster enclosure opening exposed to public view. Anyone want to offer a motion on that topic?
If it's not being moved, is it a mute item?
His request was, can it encroach? That's denied. Now there's also a request for it to be in a public view, and I think that needs to be addressed.
I think the applicant would like to speak.
I'm sorry, sir? Come on up. Yep, come on up to the microphone.
I mean, technically, if you look at it now, the dumpster enclosure does open to the public currently, and I just don't want to be denied on that, and then somehow it come back and say, oh, well, you do currently open to the public, and so you're in violation currently, you know? I mean, basically, the drive aisle that you enter into this Burger King looks directly at the dumpster enclosure, so.
I believe they're talking about public view from the roads, not necessarily inside the property. Is that correct, staff?
I mean,
You're
you can
not
see
talking
this
about
from
being-
the road if you drove down the road.
That would be the intent of the code. There's also additional screening requirements that have to be met in order to shield it from public view.
And it does have screening currently now.
Yeah. I mean,
So if there were a motion that discusses if the dumpster is to be moved from its current location, it will not be exposed, or it can be exposed to public view, would that be an appropriate motion?
I was reading the staff report as it recommends proposing to relocate the enclosure to the southwest corner, and I would ask staff to comment on that rather than answering your question. In the staff report, page 66, the last paragraph, that paragraph analyzes the request to relocate the dumpster enclosure to the southwest corner and provides other code requirements for screening, as was just stated. And I would just ask staff if what their analysis is of the dumpster location based on this staff report.
The proposed location of the new proposed location?
It says here that the applicant is proposing to relocate to the southwest corner, and then it later says relocation to a more appropriate location is possible.
I see. Yes. So being that there, just noting that there are excess parking spaces, there are opportunities elsewhere on the site, not necessarily being where the existing dumpster is located now, but there are other options on the site to possibly reduce a parking spot and put the dumpster enclosure there to where it's properly screened and not exposed, without it causing, ingress egress issues when servicing the dumpster enclosure.
And just to clarify that, where she's referring to, there's some existing parking spaces along the east side of the building. And in discussions that we've had with the city prior to this meeting today, that seems to where the city would like us to place the dumpster is on that side of the building. It's kind of hidden by the building. And it would obviously still have to meet the required screening requirements and all that. Like I said, the only issue with that is it becomes a vertical challenge for the client because of having the canopies over these drive-throughs. But if the board, which they've already have granted the drive-through, we're more than willing to work with the city on the dumpster location. If that's, if that makes the city happy and
You
is
said on
more
the-
in line with the code.
You said on the east side of the building?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm well aware, thank you. Where it indicates in this writing, the applicant is proposing to relocate the dumpster enclosure to the southwest corner. Now you're talking about the other side.
Yeah, that's where we had, in the proposal, we're trying to put it in that southwest corner, but that would have required the landscape violation
Right.
and being open to the public. What the city is proposed to us to do is, you see there's parking spaces along the east side of the building now. If we add the second drive-through, the city is making the argument that these parking spaces are basically null and void because no one can access them without going through the drive-through lane.
I don't recall there being parking spots on that side of the building.
And
All right.
the city is basically saying we could put the dumpster there,
All right. Any other questions to Mr. Barwick, Ms. Anderson? All right, thank you, sir. Any further discussion amongst the board? Quite frankly, if they're gonna move it to the east side of the building, it looks a little bit more sheltered there because of the angle in which one even has to enter or drive past on Columbia. That would actually not be a bad idea. I don't think it should be put on the west side or the north side, which was my biggest concern when reading this request. Those are my 2 cents. I'll entertain a motion.
We are only addressing whether the enclosure opening will be exposed to public view, period.
That is correct.
I'd like to make a motion
You may.
pursuant to variance 26-2023, 3293 Columbia Boulevard. Item 2 is the variance request to allow a dumpster enclosure opening exposed to public view. It's a variance to LDR Chapter 30, Section 30-339E3. I propose approving.
Propose approving that request. All right. I have a motion to approve the request. Do I have a second?
I'm confused. Approve the request or deny it?
My mistake.
To deny?
The motion is to deny.
The motion is to deny the request to allow the dumpster enclosure to be opening exposed to public view. All right. The motion is to deny. Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? No. Roll call, please.
Member Van Deven,
I agree with the denial.
The answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Member Wheelis,
Yes.
Chairwoman Smith Rodriguez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Taylor,
Yes.
Member Beckles.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Barwick, you can encroach the drive-through into,
I'm sorry, I failed to ask you all for the last decision and for this one to state the basis for your denial. And so at this point, before we close this item, if you could state those reasons.
Mr. Willis?
There were no special conditions or circumstances peculiar to the property.
Okay, good to go? On this variance?
I think that will work for both. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Barwick, you can encroach into the landscape yard for the drive-through, cannot for the dumpster, and dumpster cannot. Your variance was denied to basically having it in public view. So just read your paperwork carefully.
If it stays where it's at currently, that won't be an issue.
I'll let you read your paperwork and work with the city on that. And just be sure to read everything carefully. All right, that'll conclude our new business variance requests. All right, there's no public present, so I assume there are no cards, Ms. Kim?
That is correct.
Okay, Ms. Anderson or Ms. Farrell, any reports from the city?
No reports from staff.
None, thank you.
All right, any reports from our board members?
When is our next meeting? Is it got moved, right? Or is it still in November, the end? Presently.
It's the Wednesday following Thanksgiving.
November 29th is your regularly scheduled board meeting. It does not conflict with the holiday week.
Okay, so there won't be a December meeting.
We have not rearranged our schedule for a combined November-December meeting. I don't know what the plan is for December, whether there will be a meeting or not then.
Not been discussed yet.
Excuse-
has not been
It hasn't
discussed
been
yet.
discussed.
Okay, just confirming.
The fourth meeting in December would be December 27th, and City Hall is closed on the 25th and 26th. So business is open that day, but I don't know what type of applications we may receive for that schedule.
What's the date of the November?
We don't have any applications at this time. I'd just like to.
For November?
For November 29th?
Oh, awesome. That would lead us to have no meeting in November, but I don't know about December.
Okay, all right. So November 29th would be our next meeting if there was something, but it sounds like we're already past the deadline.
I think it would be in the next couple of days if there is
Okay.
one.
All
Yeah.
right, so everyone keep your fingers crossed. All right, then if there's nothing further, we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:13 PM. Thank you.